And dramatic testimony in week 4 of Sean Combs' sex trafficking trial. This week, we heard from a woman on the stand who says Combs once dangled her over a balcony at the apartment of Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. And we do want to welcome back Neama Rahmani, a former federal prosecutor who's been following this case. Neama, thank you so much for being with us here again.
Of course, thank you for having me. Graphic testimony as we wrap up week 4 of the Diddy trial.
Yeah, walk us through that testimony and what has stood out to you in court this week.
Jane is currently on the witness stand and she's testifying under a pseudonym. She's an important witness for a few reasons. First, she was dating Combs up until the time of his arrest last year. And she's talking about freak-offs and sexual abuse that happened even after his homes in Los Angeles and Miami were raided. But from an evidentiary perspective, she's even more important because unlike Cassie Ventura, she told Combs that she did not want to participate in these hotel nights. She did not want to have sex with other men. The defense scored some points on Ventura's cross-examination because there were text messages and emails that seemed to indicate that she was planning and was willing to participate in the freak-offs.
And why is that so important, Neama, that possible proof that she didn't want to do this? Why is that so important, and what might the prosecution be hoping to show with that?
It's extremely important because the defense's entire theory in this case is that the sexual contact happened, but it was consensual. Adults can consent to sex no matter how freaky it is, so it's important for the prosecution to show that it was not consensual and that the activity was procured by force, fraud, or coercion. And it's really force and coercion in this case. That's why you're hearing the testimony about the violence. You're hearing testimony about drug use. That ties into force and coercion, respectively.
Thank you, Neama. And also to note, I found this interesting. The judge gave a warning to Combs during testimony this week having to do with his interaction with the jury. Please tell us about that and whether or not that's significant in this at all, or just kind of a slap on the wrist of sorts.
It's potentially very significant, and this is why defendants, even the lawyers, are not supposed to be communicating directly with the jurors. So during some of the testimony yesterday from Bana Bongalan, who was Cassie's former best friend, Combs was nodding at the jury, and he tends to shake his head when he doesn't like what he's hearing and nod when he does. And he was shaking his head. And this isn't the second witness he's done that with. The previous witness was one of his former assistants, George Kaplan. So Judge Subramanian took offense to that. It's not appropriate. And he said if Combs continues to do so, interact with a jury, he's actually going to exclude or remove him from the courtroom entirely.
So that is actually a significant interaction there. And Neama, what else stood out to you this week that we should be zeroing in on as this plays out?
I think what we're looking for is the prosecution building this case by corroborating Cassie Ventura's testimony. This is important because jurors might, ask themselves, well, if someone was in an abusive relationship, if there was physical and sexual violence, why did Cassie stay for so long? She dated Combs for more than a decade. But if victim after victim is telling the same story, even if jurors have doubts about one, they probably will have a difficult time disbelieving everyone entirely when they go back into that deliberation room.
Building some sort of a pattern here. Okay, fourth week, looking ahead to next steps. What are we looking at as far as what comes next, Neama?
Well, the prosecution is going to announce their witnesses for next week, at least the beginning, at the end of the day today. I expect to see more victims and really more employees. And the employees are important because for the criminal enterprise, the racketeering charge, the prosecution needs to prove that Combs is the head of this organization and he has his employees getting the illegal and prescription drugs, hiring the prostitutes and the porn stars. So it's important to show that enterprise as well as that pattern of racketeering activity. That's why we've heard a lot about sex and drug trafficking, but there's been testimony about other racketeering crimes such as bribery, extortion, kidnapping, arson. Who could forget Kid Cudi's car? This shows the criminal enterprise and all the crimes that are committed on its behalf, and I expect to see more of that from the prosecution. And they're probably going to wrap their case in chief, if not next week, the following week. So we're getting close.
We are getting close there. Former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani, thank you so much for joining us with your insight and expertise.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Have a great weekend.